Hello folks! Today we're going to take a look at using e-cigarettes in 2025. Using an e-cigarette is generically called vaping and comes in many shapes and sizes. The purpose of this video is to give a brief overview to those of you who may be considering it and don't have any first-hand experience. I have to say up front that using nicotine in general is a bad thing. It is habit forming and will lead to long-term health effects that you won't like. It affects many aspects of human physiology and offers little to no tangible benefits. That being said, if you're currently smoking regular cigarettes, switching to an electronic cigarette has been shown to reduce the harm you cause to yourself and may offer a path to reducing or removing nicotine intake from your life. Let's start with the science. Vaping works from a very simple principle, the atomization of liquid by using heat. While there are other products that can also use this technology besides nicotine, this discussion will be strictly limited to nicotine-based e-liquids. E-liquid or e-juice are words that describe the fluid that is used and can be purchased in varying levels of nicotine, including no nicotine. There are four main ingredients in e-liquid. There are flavorings, propylene glycol, vegetable glycerin, and, optionally, nicotine. The purpose of the propylene glycol, or PG for short, is to deliver the flavoring and the kick that you get on inhaling, called the throat hit. The purpose of the vegetable glycerin, or VG for short, is to produce the vapor or smoke that you see when you blow out the puff. I generally try to avoid the term smoke when talking about e-cigarettes because technically smoke is a byproduct of fire or burning, and there is no burning involved in an electronic cigarette. The flavorings are very small amounts relatively speaking and added simply to make the experience more enjoyable. The ratio of these ingredients are generally tailored to different types of vaping equipment. In broad terms, there are two main types of e-cigarettes. Those that are tailored to the traditional feel of smoking a cigarette. These are called mouth to lung and are used by taking the vapor in, then inhaling it into your lungs, then releasing. This type will produce less vapor but offer more throat hit. The other type that evolved a little after vaping became common is direct lung inhaling, in which you inhale the vapor straight down. This type produces more vapor and generically requires more power from your battery than mouth to lung. Almost any disposable device that you'll buy somewhere at like a gas station will be mouth to lung, or MTL for short. It is focused on higher nicotine concentrations than direct lung. Another innovation was created by Juul, which is using a different process to refine and add the nicotine to the e-liquid called salt-based. The salt is used in the processing to allow for higher nicotine levels and faster absorption into the body. Its original concept was to allow smaller, less powerful devices to pack more of a punch. Because of the small, convenient size of most of the devices, it has become very popular. Its high level of nicotine and quick absorption has also made it a cheap thrill for some people who like to get a little nick buzz going. Because of the additional stress on the body, I do not personally recommend these. I would also caution that some equipment like Vuse, which is made by Philip Morris, may contain additional chemicals that could potentially increase the addiction to a certain brand. Let's talk now about some of the different types of devices that are available. I'll start by describing the things they have in common, then we can move into what makes them each fit into a unique category. There are a few components necessary to all electronic cigarettes: a power supply, a liquid reserve, a heating element, usually called a coil, and a conduit to move the liquid into the coil, usually called a wick. When you take a puff, the vacuum created, along with the capillary action of the wick, draw the liquid from the reserve into the heated coil, which then boils and creates the vapor. The devices can be separated into two main components: the power supply, called a battery or a mod, and the vapor-producing apparatus, which can be called many things depending on how it's set up. Tank, clearomizer, pod, or dripper are the most common. Another key component of the vaping process is airflow. Mouth-to-lung devices will have more restricted airflow and mimic the draw of a cigarette. Direct lung devices have much more airflow and are far less restrictive. Most devices have some adjustment to the airflow setting to allow it to tailor it a bit to your preferences. The coil is a consumable component and will need to be replaced periodically. Some devices incorporate the e-liquid reserve with the coil and are called pods. These will, generally speaking, have the highest cost of ownership due to the extra materials that's in the tank that will also get thrown away when changing the coil. How long a coil lasts depends on several factors. Some e-liquid flavors have higher sugar or colorings that can shorten the life of your coil. Usage pattern also plays into how often you'll have to change your coils. As a completely random guess, a coil will last anywhere from a few days to a few weeks. The wicking material will also need to be changed, but in almost all equipment types, it is integrated into the coil unit and will be replaced at the same time. For hardcore enthusiasts such as myself, there are devices that allow you to make each component separately and are called rebuildables. While the devices themselves probably cost more, the cost of ownership day to day is the lowest. On the other side, single-use devices are meant to be thrown away entirely when the liquid supply is used and are normally not rechargeable. These are the simplest to use, but also have a higher cost of ownership because you will be tossing the battery every time you run out of juice in the tank. Juul brand is an example of single-use devices. When you're first starting out, I recommend using a system that has a replaceable coil or pod system. The coil design is what ultimately determines the vaping experience, and factory-made coils offer a far higher level of consistency and quality. Most devices offer various coil options to allow you to tailor the experience more to your preferences. For the power side of things, most mods will use a standard size battery called 18650. The 18650 originally was used as a flashlight battery and is lithium-ion in chemistry. They are rechargeable and pretty stable. The number is actually a description of their size. They're 18 millimeters across and 65 millimeters long. The 0 at the end indicates a circular shape. As vaping has evolved, several other sizes have been used to either make the devices more pocketable or offer longer life between charges. A typical direct lung device will use 1 or 2 batteries, but I have owned mods that used up to 6. A lot of the mods that originated with vaping were converted flashlights and called mechanicals because they did not have any electronics at all and mechanically connected the power to the coil. Nowadays, the mod manufacturers have universally added various features like battery meters and the ability to adjust their power internally to match the properties of the coil. Almost every mod will also have a USB port that will act as a battery charger. Some of the smaller pen-type batteries will require a separate charger that screws on the end of the battery. These pen-type units will use a small pointed tank called the CurioMechanics. These are probably one of the best places to start considering if you're starting out, simply because they're relatively small and offer a vaping experience very similar to that of smoking. They have sort of fallen out of fashion with the newest vaping equipment out there, but can still be found and are usually quite cheap. Let me take a second to touch on your equipment purchase. When you're shopping, it's easy to be drawn to the coolest looking devices and colors. When I worked in a vape shop, most folks wanted to impress their friends with their rigs. The truth of the matter is that the only person who really cares about what you're vaping out of is you. At the end of the day, even if your tank shoots out fireworks when you take a puff, nobody will ever stop you on the street and say, "Oh my goodness, that's the most unbelievably cool thing I've ever seen." It just won't happen. Buy something that makes you happy and you think you'll enjoy using, but brand names, colors, and flashy lighting should be the last thing you worry about when you're giving them your hard-earned money. So what should you buy? That sort of depends on what you're trying to accomplish. If you're trying to quit smoking or reduce your harm level, I'd normally suggest picking up a relatively cheap, refillable, rechargeable mouth-to-lung unit. For a lot of folks, the Aspire Nautilus has been a great tank. It's easy to use, doesn't leak when treated properly, and requires a relatively small amount of power. When purchasing a power supply, again sometimes called a mod, I would look for one that provides at least 30 to 40 watts of power. One thing that is somewhat of a downfall of the smaller mods is they usually incorporate a built-in battery. This is nice for the convenience and size, but they normally use a lithium polymer power cell, which can be more susceptible to failure, and when they fail, they can do so in rather spectacular fashion if overheated or punctured. The other problem is that they have a shorter lifespan, and when the battery wears out, you're also tossing away the rest of the apparatus, which will increase costs. The choice of a power supply is ultimately dictated by the amount of power the coil you're going to use requires. Power is measured in watts in today's equipment, and the easy way to say it is bigger numbers mean more. Coils can range anywhere from 10 watts to 250 depending on its design. Mouth-to-lung coils are usually under the 30 watt range, while direct lung coils start at about 40 watts and go up from there. When picking a mod, be sure to add a little extra headroom so you're not running it at full capacity every time you take a puff. It will shorten the life of the battery and potentially overheat. For the vape producing part of the equation, I'd recommend starting with a basic tank and a replaceable coil. One of the questions to ask is how easy it is to fill with liquid, how hard the coil is to replace, and how readily available are the replacement coils. If coils are overheated, which can come from running the liquid out and continuing to vape, or holding the fire button too long on a single puff, you can burn the wicking material, which will render it useless until replaced. If this happens to you when you're on vacation or your favorite shop is closed, you'll want a type that is readily available because you won't be able to vape it until it's replaced. Even though a salesperson may tell you that some setup is the newest and greatest things, it happens often that manufacturers move on and stop supporting the existing model. In that case, you're sunk, and most coils are not interchangeable with other models. Buy a tank that won't leave you stranded after a month after you buy it. Another thing to touch on is what people mistake for leaking. In certain conditions, the e-liquid can ooze out of the airflow holes and give the impression that the tank itself isn't sealing properly. Nobody wants to take a puff and get slimy hands. The things that are usually at the root of this issue are too high of a temperature or sudden changes in pressure. Going on an airplane, for instance, with a full tank is a sure recipe for trouble. Another common way to cause leaking is to leave a mod in a hot car. As the liquid heats up, it also gets thinner. The airspace in a partially filled tank can also be expanded or contracted by temperature fluctuations that can cause leaking. Almost all types of fluid reservoirs work on the same principle as holding your finger over a straw full of water. As long as the vacuum is maintained, nothing comes out. Believe it or not, the weight of the liquid in a tank causes it to try to push out through the coil. Regardless of the type of reservoir, be sure to follow the manufacturer's directions for refilling, as you're essentially pulling your finger off the top of the straw and letting gravity and air pressure get involved, which can make your first few puffs after filling pretty soggy. This is called flooding a coil, which will also cause liquid to come out in the only place it can, the airflow passages. Choosing the right e-liquid for the device you're using is also crucial to its performance. Smaller devices like mouth-to-lung will usually function better with a thinner blend of liquid, while a direct lunger usually likes thicker liquids. I'd also again remind you that direct lung liquid should be lower in nicotine than mouth-to-lung. The nicotine concentration measurement unit in e-liquid is milligrams of nicotine per milliliters of liquid. This is usually denoted as mg or a percentage. If you have any questions, be sure to ask someone, as the wrong nicotine concentration can make or break your vaping pleasure. Too high will cause a burning sensation on inhale, and too low will not be physically satisfying. A very generic rule of thumb is that mouth-to-lung units should be around 12 milligrams of nic and direct lung about 3 milligrams. Salt-based nicks are usually much higher at around 30 to 60 milligrams. This is one of the main reasons I recommend steering clear of salt-based liquids entirely. A final piece of advice I can offer is to only charge the battery when you need to. Just like a phone or any other rechargeable battery, charging too often or too long will shorten the life of the battery overall. Hopefully your power supply has some sort of indicator as to the battery level. Keep an eye on it and get an idea of how long it really lasts. If you can skip every other day charging it, do so. The first sign of a battery failure is reduced output. It's a self-repeating cycle. If you charge every day at a 75% full battery, you will eventually have to charge it every day, and then it will stop lasting a full day. I also don't recommend using it while you're charging. This is a general rule for any device. The additional current pulled while using it and charging adds to battery heat and in extreme circumstances can cause battery failure. If you're considering trying to switch to electronic cigarettes, the best plan I can offer is to pick up a cheap one, try it, and ask a lot of questions. Vapers are a friendly and helpful crowd in general, and I think that getting as much knowledge as possible is a good thing. People tend to speak from their own experience and preferences, but getting as much help as you can will help you avoid the common gotchas that most of us went through when we were starting. That's about it for now. I hope this was helpful. If you're trying to quit smoking or interested in harm reduction, I'd really give electronic cigarettes a try. If you're just trying to annoy your fellow humans with unreasonably large clouds or trying to catch a buzz at high school, maybe it's time to reconsider your life's choices. Thanks for listening. If you have questions or want to offer useful comments, please feel free to use the comment section, and I'll do the best I can to answer them or point you in the right direction. As your journey continues, someday you might be the help that someone else starting out needs. If you're new to the channel, please consider liking and subscribing. It does help a small channel like mine get going. I appreciate your time and enjoy your day.